Welcome everyone to Synergy. We have another wonderful guest coming in. It's Lisa Stott, and she is out of Montreal, and this is our show for holistic wellness, recovery, spirituality, basically anything that gets interesting to discuss is good here. And I'll let Lisa describe what who she is and what exactly she does. I will call her, an expert on emotions because I can do that. And Lisa calls herself a coach. So go ahead, Lisa. Tell us a little about what you do.
Yes, absolutely. First of all, thank you, Paul, for inviting me to your show. I appreciate it. So yes, I consider myself an emotional intelligence coach. Other people will consider myself an expert, but like I said prior to the interview, I still have, with my humility, I'm not there yet in calling myself an expert, even though I am hired to do what I do. So I live in Montreal, which is in Quebec, French province of Canada. So my first language is French, but I'm completely comfortable in doing this in English as well.
Thank God, because I know no French.
Yeah, yeah. We could have done this in English, French, or even maybe Italian, but we'll
Oh
leave
my
that.
goodness.
Yeah, yeah, that was actually the first language that I learned
Oh,
prior to
you're a
French.
smart cookie here.
This is what I love about this province too. Is very European. My mother came from Italy, so which is why I was able to learn that language.
I'm surprised there's no vowel at the end of your name.
I know it's because my father's British.
Oh,
That's
okay, there we go.
But people sometimes call me Sotarelli. I'm
Oh,
like, okay,
there.
I like that.
That works. Just don't call me late for supper.
Exactly. So listen, I can tell you a bit about how I came about doing what I do today, because 10 years ago, I would not be speaking to you right now. I used to work in the corporate world. I was in sales and marketing, and I was absolutely miserable. So it was about 5 years ago. I was sitting at my desk at my last job, and I remember just being completely depressed. And it wasn't the first time I felt like that. Have a history of depression. And on my mother's side, my grandfather took his own life. There's a lot of mental illness in our family on my mother's side. And I had a lot of suicidal temptations in the past. I just felt like I was living a life that I was not meant to live. And I had followed a certain path because I thought that that's what I needed to follow as my path. So I married I married a man that was an amazing person, is still an amazing person. I had 2 children, which were the biggest catapult to my spiritual awakening. Because I went through really hardcore depression after I gave birth to my kids. And it was absolutely perfect. And I can say this today because if all of that did not happen, and especially also if I have to go back to my past, where I grew up in a family where there was a lot of violence and abuse, and I believe in soul contracts. So I really believe that I chose my mother, that I chose my father to learn exactly what I'm learning about myself right now and about the world. If you would have asked me this 10, 15 years ago, I would not be the same person you'd be talking to. You'd be talking to an angry person.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be talking to a person that's constantly sad, that's not able to understand her own emotions, that's not able to self-regulate, that's in a victim mode constantly, that's blaming everything around her versus taking responsibility for the creation of her own life. So the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing today is because there was 5 years ago, what, like, if I go back to what I was telling you before, when I was sitting at my desk and I had written a letter to my boss, resignation letter, telling him that I couldn't stay in that job anymore.
Mhm.
And something happened where I just needed to tell him that it's because I didn't want to live anymore, because I didn't understand my purpose. And it was such a strong feeling, Paul. It was just, I didn't understand. I'm like, this is not what I'm meant to be doing. I don't understand.
Mhm.
And then luckily, he told me to go and get help. So I started getting help. And for that first year after I quit, I started working on the most important project of my life, which was myself. Really just going back and figuring out, who is Lisa Stott?
Mm.
Who is Lisa Stott? So really going on this journey of getting to know that 7-year-old Lisa and really reparenting myself, because there was a part of me that I didn't even know how to accompany my own kids with what they were going through at a very young age. And then I realized that I need to reparent myself first.
Mhm.
I need to go back and understand everything that I went through. And that's when I realized this one. I had Paul, my spiritual awakening was literally in fifth gear. You know, when things happen to you in your life, one after another, after another, after another, and you feel like you're getting hit over and over again, but you understand why you're getting hit. And then you get back up. So, and I knew that I had to reparent myself first in order to then accompany my children. And I knew at that moment, I'm like, this is what I am meant to do. I started reading up about emotional intelligence. It was just, I was so attracted to learning more about neuroscience, about quantum physics, about how the body works. And the more I started studying that, the more I wanted to learn more. I was more curious. I'm like, I'm remembering why I'm here. And it was really like that. It was like, I remembered why I was
Mhm.
here. And
I
I get shivers
mean,
when I say that. Yeah.
well, it's kind of I think of it like a snowball going down a mountain, becoming an avalanche. You know, it builds on itself, and you know, I had the same, you know, Saint John of the Cross called that Dark Night of the Spirit, Dark Night of the Soul. Where after with me it was 40 years of, you know, a drug addiction and severe mental illness, treatment resistant depression, bipolar,
Yeah.
PTSD, and so on and so forth, that left me just wanting to be done with the pain. I wanted to be done with the pain. My children were adults by this time, and at that point it took a while to build an earnest suicide attempt because, you know, I had studied psychology. I knew the legacy that suicide leaves behind in a family. It opens a door to more suicide. And so I had to get over the hurdle of convincing myself that it would still be better off if I wasn't here because I wouldn't be hurting them continuously any longer. And what you said about starting to be able to process your own emotions in order to teach your children, because that was something that it wasn't discussed in my family.
Mm.
No one knew how to deal with their emotions. People would eat their emotions away. They would drink their emotions away. They would use substances to get rid of their emotions. But they couldn't teach me how to deal with them because they didn't know how to deal with them. They were using addiction, which I believe is a symptom of poor emotional regulation. I think when I was 48, I had started meditation.
Mm.
I was miserable. I had gone through my last rehab. I had anhedonia, I had Parkinsonisms, I had brain damage from the drugs and the alcohol. I didn't know if I'd ever be able to walk correctly again, but I had started the process of it was dual fold. I was writing for one thing, just writing for social media or for blogs and stuff. And I was just being really raw and honest. This is my life. This is what I've done. I've hurt my children. I've hurt my wife. I don't know how to live. But the writing started clarifying that
Exactly.
spaghetti nest in there,
That's
because if
it.
you asked me I feel like shit, I want to feel good.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you I was feeling betrayed, or I was feeling, I was feeling hurt. I'm feeling angry. It was just a hodgepodge, like a hamster spinning around on a
Absolutely.
wheel
Yeah.
in
You need
there.
to empty that brain, empty the mind. And that's actually the part of my healing process began like that, by writing a minimum of 3 to 5 pages every morning. And it
Nice.
was just blah. I was like just vomiting on paper. I had to kind of vomit everything on paper to be able to really tap into the heart, tap into what I was really feeling and the causes and why. But that takes a lot of, first of all, that takes a lot of self-love, which is something I did not have back then.
Hmm.
Because you need to be able to start with that self-love to take action. And that's a big difference between the ego and the soul. The ego doesn't want to have to do the work, right? The ego will try to numb so you don't have to go there. So it's going to go and take some alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever it is, to numb. And I knew when the soul will guide you to take action. So I remember at that moment I was taking action, and I it didn't feel like there was a difference being made, but I knew that that's the path that I needed to take at that moment. And then the more I started writing, the more I started to find out things about myself that were there and that were just waiting to come out. It just wanted to come out.
Hmm.
And I remember just, it was pouring down my cheeks and I felt liberated. And when you feel liberated, you feel lighter. And that's the thing, right? Before that, you feel heavy, you feel like rocks. And all of this lingo, I've learned to teach this to other people, because I too did not learn about emotions. For us, it was either shame, anger, sadness constantly. And I remember seeing my kids when they were much younger, and I said, the best way that I can teach them to develop their emotional intelligence, which I truly believe it's the language of the soul,
Hmm.
is if I incarnate and I embody everything that I'm learning. So then that way I can just be the example and not even try to teach it, because I am that.
I am so glad, I am so glad you had such a terrible time and came to this.
Yes,
That
me
sounds,
too. I
yeah,
am.
I mean, I can laugh about it because I went through the most horrible period of my life of misery before coming to the other side, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I learned so much from the suffering. I learned
Yes.
so many different tools and so forth to be able to do it. But I think I had been meditating for a month, or maybe more than that, trying to do at least 20 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. I was just going to do it because other people said it would eventually work, and I wasn't getting anything out of it. My head's going everywhere. I don't feel like I'm meditating. I don't feel calm. I don't feel at peace. But one day, after practicing for enough days in a row, I get that moment where I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this is what it means to be
Yeah.
relaxed. I had gone from age 7. I was abused at age 7 by a teacher. And from that age forward, and then years of bullying and abuse after that, that I had been in mobilization my entire life, either immobilization or shutdown. You
Mhm.
know, and so, you know, I did not understand calm. Oh, this is what it's like to be calm and look at the sunset, to look at the stars in the sky,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
enjoy the shore, the ocean. And from that point, I could really start, you know, regulating myself. I could start controlling my own autonomic nervous system. Are you familiar with Janice Webb? She wrote a book on childhood emotional neglect. I highly recommend it if you haven't,
okay.
because there's an ennui or overall depression for people that weren't taught how to deal with their emotions, where they can't even put their finger on it. They're just kind of lost, hopeless, in shutdown, and so on and so forth. You know, things will be good, and they'll feel a long black cloud coming down anyway.
Yeah.
And it's usually from not ever having been taught what they were going through, what their emotions were, and it wasn't out of most cases out of malevolence. I mean, there I had some malevolence in my life with bad, you know, bad people, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, my family just didn't know what they didn't know, so they
Right.
couldn't teach me it. Do you teach about the body mind connection within, starting to recognize the states of, oh,
Ab-
this is calm, this is mobilization, this is fear or excitement, this is shutdown.
Absolutely. It all starts with the mind and body connection. You know, self-awareness begins with body self-awareness. And a lot of people that want to avoid feeling the pain will disconnect themselves from their body,
Hmm.
right? They're going to shut down so they don't have to feel the pain. But the body mind connection, it's all a matter of your state in the present moment. So that's why when you were saying before about meditation, it's like practicing mindfulness on a regular basis. So you're training that mind and body connection to become aware of what's happening in your body.
Hmm.
Because that's what the thing is. I mean, we all we're human beings, we process emotions. And a lot of people don't really know what emotions are, right? If I were to ask you, what is an emotion? It's energy in motion, because everything is energy. I mean, Albert Einstein said this, right? 99% of everything is energy, only 1% is matter. So emotion is this information that our body sends us. It's these electrical signals that our body sends us for us to interpret and then put an action, like an appropriate action into place. So what happens often is when someone will feel a certain emotion that's uncomfortable, what many people do is they're going to suppress it or
Hmm.
push it away or ignore it, right? Because it's uncomfortable. But the thing is that emotion is information. So it's just the signals are going to keep on going on until you process that data, until you analyze that information and you observe it, right?
Hmm.
Until you observe it to understand what happens. And there's like this cycle that happens. So the emotion is being sent. You get this information. You need to understand what it's trying to tell you. You need to put words also on it. Because when you're actually, and that's why it's important, that's why I teach children also how to cultivate their emotional intelligence. And first of all, it's being aware of what's happening inside your mind, in your body, noticing where it's happening in your body, befriend what is happening in your body, and then use words to say, like, I'm feeling the sadness or anger. And something that I often will tell people, whether it's a child or an adult that hasn't had the opportunity to develop their emotional vocabularies, is if they can't pinpoint the exact emotion that they're feeling, because very often sometimes they're going to say it's a certain emotion. It's like, oh, I'm really angry. Anger is often a cover-up emotion
Oh, yes,
that will
definitely.
cover hurt, that will cover shame very often, because they won't want to say that it's shame. So they're going to say they're angry, right? So one of the tips I'll tell people is to use symbols. So for example, does it feel like it's a rock? inside your body? Where is that rock inside your body? And people, because the subconscious mind understands visuals and symbols easily.
Mm.
So it's going to be easier for the person to say, yeah, you know what? It feels like there's like this rock right here in my chest. Or it's like there's something happening in my throat. Automatically, just by them naming that sensation and the location in the body, it releases, it liberates part of the emotion that the body needs to liberate.
What ages of children do you usually work with doing this?
Usually 3 to 10. I wrote a book for children and it's addressed. I do workshops in daycares also and in schools to help young children work on that. I'll do meditation with the young kids as well. Practice mindfulness. It could be done as of 3 years old, because it's really as of 3 years old that the basic of self-awareness, empathy, self-regulation, that's all in the prefrontal cortex that really begins to develop. And when I work with parents, I asked them this question. I'm going to ask you this question too, just for fun. The part of the brain, like I just mentioned, the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for self-regulation, empathy, self-awareness, and basically it's the CEO of emotional intelligence. It's the seat of emotional intelligence, especially when it's connected to the heart. I asked them, how old, at what age do you think that a human being is, the front part of the brain is fully developed? So the neocortex is fully developed. At what age do you think it is? So I'm asking you that question, Paul.
Oh, I
When?
would say that in my case of arrested development, it probably still isn't fully developed.
Well, so let's say if we were to go with like with science, with what
Say for a
scientific study
male,
has shown.
35 years old.
Okay, well, that's interesting. It's 25, but I like the fact that you brought up 35, because by the age of 35, most of the brains, like neural pathways and all that, have been made, but there's this thing called neuroplasticity. So you can still, change your brain programming until the day that you move on to your next life. So just the fact of knowing that the front part of your brain, which was responsible for a lot of these emotional intelligence skills, is developed by age 25. And I hear certain people tell me that they're teenagers. Let's say they can't self-regulate, they don't know how to talk to people. I tell them, first of all, you need to showcase empathy towards them, because they don't even have the physiological tools. They're not even equipped physically. That's why it's our role as parent, adult, to accompany the kids throughout the process. We can never expect our kids to self-regulate on their own. When I hear some parents saying, well, just let them cry it out, I have trouble with that. I have trouble with that, unless that's what the child needs at that moment. But you'll know if you get to learn the child's.
Who's easier, the children or the parents? I think I know the answer.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, when the parent is the main tool. So that's why for me it was important, and I knew I needed to reparent myself first. And when I coach, when I get hired to give some workshops or conferences, let's say in daycares, or even like in companies, I often give examples with kids, because I know that I'm talking to the human behind, right? They go, okay, talk to me. What do we do with the kids? How do we help the kids? I'll always ask them, talk to me about you first. And right away, I'll get this resistance, right? The resistance bar comes up. It's like, oh, me? That's the ego that's there. The ego is like, wait a second. No, 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 no. Let's talk about someone else. I don't want to have to do the work, right? But that's what it is you need to do the work first. And I feel like if I have to go back to one of your initial questions, is I really feel like one of my mission here is to help people cultivate their emotional intelligence. So then that way they have little awakenings here and there. Now they shed a bit of their ego. So then they get to the pure essence of who they really are. And the more you connect yourself with your authentic self, so you push your ego aside, the more that you can create the life that you were meant to create. And I also like to say that, well, often, let's say people realize they're in their ego and then they start getting upset with themselves. Tell them right away, you need to just give yourself self-forgiveness right away and self-love. And don't blame your ego. You need to embrace your ego too. And that people don't understand when I say that. I'm like, you need to love your ego. You need to love it, but it should not lead your life. It should, let's say if I had to give a percentage, your ego should lead 10% of your life and leave 90% space to your soul, because you need your ego. It's there for your survival, right? But it's there for your
Yeah,
survival. Pretty
I'm
much is.
learning. I'm learning that. I'm learning that in the corporations that I've worked in, that I need to have an ego, that a face that I present um to a professional face, so to speak. I don't have a different Paul for anywhere I am. I might tone down my cursing if I'm in a professional environment or so on, but I had to learn a lot of lessons about how people behaved within the business world that I was naive to, especially in corporate healthcare. You know, we don't have socialized medicine here, and so we have corporations dictating healthcare, which means that they are always going to compromise your patient and client care for profit. Profit is
Yes,
always going to be king. It's always going to come first, and you get some very bad models of treatment in that aspect, because a poor model of treatment brings repeat customers. So why,
absolutely.
then, and if I'm gonna look at any, if I'm gonna open a business, what would I like? I would like repeat customers. I would like people to come back and buy more stuff from me, and make me wealthy enough to have nice cars and everything else. But when those two things are combined within the structure of healthcare,
Mm,
they do not mutually coexist well.
mm,
One will always overtake the other, and the one that's going to overtake it is going to be the fiduciary concerns, the money concerns. And so, in my naivety, I would bring things to their attention that weren't, I had been to 35 different rehabs. I knew a good program. I had healed myself by this time, so I knew it worked.
right.
So I can bring it, because I'm not going to tell anybody to do anything that I don't do myself. If I'm telling a person to start meditating daily, I meditate daily. To try
Mm,
some Tai Chi or yoga, I recently just started doing Tai Chi. The journaling, I do so these are all things that either have helped me heal, or I have witnessed help other
right.
people heal. I will not give you nonsense that has statistics. Oh, this supposedly should work. No, I will tell them. So in my naivety, thought, well, if I bring problems to the CEO and to the clinical director, they'll want to correct these things. So
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can help people better. And no,
yeah.
they did not want to. They did not want to hear problems. They wanted to have the status quo stay exactly the same. And one other thing before I get back to your discourse, I found that it was almost magically happened in my family that when I got well, my children started getting well almost by osmosis.
Absolutely, because you're healing that intergenerational also trauma. As you're healing yourself, you are healing your children as well.
It was difficult. My son was 19 or 20 when and he had seen me try getting sober many times, you know. I wasn't violent, you know, I was just kind of a waste of space. I wasn't a violent person. They had their meals on the table every day. They had clothing on their back, and you know, I didn't have good parental modeling growing up either. And you know, so my son, you know, by this time, you know, he's angry, you know, rightfully angry. He's angry at how he had what he had to endure and so on. So he's walking around the house and he's slamming cupboard doors and he's smoking pot in front of me, knowing I'm trying to stay sober. And if I try to tell him anything, he's like, you know, I'm not listening to you, junkie. Why should I listen to anything you have to say? You know, but watching me practice walking away from fights. I'd walk out of the house rather than to get into an argument with him. I would do the things that I said I was doing every day.
Yeah.
He just started getting better. He
Yeah.
just started getting
Yeah.
better, and forgiveness started to set in
Yeah.
for a lot of the
Yeah.
things that I didn't know I didn't know.
I was actually gonna. I have so many things that I'd love to say based on everything you just said, Paul. But I'm gonna start with this. When I was younger, my relationship with my father was really horrible. I mean, I would get home. He would physically abuse my mother on a regular basis. So I would get home, and my mother was, black eyed and bruised. Um, Police was over at our house on a regular basis because the neighbors would call. So there was a lot of anger and resentment that I would feel when I was younger. I remember standing in front of my father and telling him, because my mother is a short, she's 5 feet tall. She weighs not even 100 pounds. And I remember standing in front of him and saying, come on, I dare you. You got to hit me first. You got to hit me. I was standing between him and my mom. I did not know what to do. And at that point, I was a teenager. And I was just so fed up of living in a household where there was so much violence constantly. And to make a long story short, I remember years later, I didn't speak to him for about 7 years. He ended up moving to Thailand. And I remember during all that time, I still was attached to that anger and that resentment. And oh gosh, did it feel heavy and painful for me. And I remember we had a discussion once, 7 years later. We were sitting on my balcony in Montreal, my first apartment. And I remember asking him, I basically, at that point, I wanted him to apologize. That's what I wanted back then. But I got something else, which was even better. I asked him, like, how do you think we feel? We're 4 kids. When we would get home and we would see mom with black eye, bruises all over her body. And his answer was the following. He starts laughing and he says, well, it's not my fault that your mom bruises easily. Her skin is sensitive. And in that moment, I had a revelation. I was like, oh, he needs to really work on himself. He's not there. He's not present. He doesn't even understand that he's not conscious at all. He is not conscious. So in that moment, I did something that completely changed who I was in my relationship with him. Is in that moment, I started practicing forgiveness, true forgiveness, and sharing so much love towards him, so much pure love and real forgiveness. And I'm telling you, I visualized it. I had pictured these metal chains around my waist and around his waist, far distance. And I just started visualizing myself cutting those chains and smiling at him and wishing him the best of luck in his healing process. And from that moment on, a few years later, I was liberated. I felt only love for him. It took some practice, right?
Yeah.
And then I found out years later that as of that moment, in the next few years, and it gets me emotional to think about this, he began his healing process.
Oh, that's great.
And today we have the most amazing relationship. So when you said forgiveness, it spoke to me, because that is the key to so much of those emotions like resentment, anger, frustration. It's forgiveness. And forgiveness is an action that you can take using your frontal lobe and your heart. But
I
it's hard to do because people will say, I'm not ready for that yet. Like, you don't even need to be ready. You just
No,
need to
you don't.
start doing it.
You need to start doing it, and that's where I branch off from regular psychology. I don't think they like to use the word forgiveness. I think it has too much of a religious connotation to them, so they use acceptance all the time, which I don't think is quite the same thing. I had to forgive my mother for, she had abandoned me. She had left me to live with my grandmother. I would consider her histrionic personality disorder. She was inappropriate a lot of times, and so on and so forth. And what I did with forgiveness was an action. I started praying for her every day, for her health and happiness, and for her to have the best life. It didn't start that way, though. It started as me praying for her to get everything she deserved.
Mm.
And I could think of what she deserved. But it did. It changed, and it came in stages for me. The first thing I noticed was I didn't get physically tense around her anymore. I
Mhm.
was because I didn't because I was so living in that tension, that constriction, that tightness, the furrowed forehead and the tight shoulders and the tight belly and everything for so long that that was my natural state most of the time. So it took that having to go away to even I was like, wow, I'm not getting upset. Then she would bring drama to me, to her grandchildren, to my children, and so on. And here's an example. Oh, someone called last night and they wanted my social security number and my bank information, and I gave it to them. No, she didn't give a stranger her bank account info. She was doing that to get a reaction, to get a rise, because it made her feel loved. We're like, why did you do that? You got to change your bank accounts. You got to do this. You got to do that. That went away. I'd be like, well, if they take all your money, I'll feed you. That's the best I can do. But I didn't worry about it. And then what miraculously happened after months and months of doing this was I could be completely neutral with her,
Yeah.
and then the offenses, the injuries just kind of faded away, and I could
Mm.
remember the good things she tried to do. She would like to take
Mhm.
me out to eat. She would take me to the beach. We'd go to the movies. It wasn't all bad things. She didn't have bad intent. She just had bad delivery. She didn't have very good support. She didn't know what she didn't know, and she didn't have good emotional regulation. She didn't have anybody supporting her. She had been abused. She had been molested.
Yeah.
She had been and everything that could happen did. And like recently, I'm reading a book. I do research constantly for the books I'm writing. So I'm reading a book, and it wanted me to name, 5 things. Oh, my kitten is in the thing.
I
That's
know he's
my
dancing or something.
that's Leo. That's my new kitten. That's
Hi,
that
Leo.
guy. Hi, buddy. Hi,
High
buddy.
five.
And asked me to name 5 negative things about my mother and 5 positive things about my mother. And I could name 5 positive things right off the bat. And I was stuck on like number 4 of negative things about her. And, I mean, if I want to dig deep, I mean, I could find 4,000, and I have. But that's when I lived in that. I was like I was like, I guess I've really forgiven her because I don't mind spending time with her. I tell her I love her. And nothing has changed about her behavior.
Mhm.
She going to her to get the love as a child, I needed, is like going to the bank to get milk. There's no milk at the bank. She couldn't do it.
Right.
She
Yeah.
doesn't have that in her. I hope someday she heals, but she's still very self-centered and selfish.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the forgiveness, and in some cases, I don't recommend reconciliation with forgiveness. If someone has sexually abused you or something, there's no reconciliation there. You don't need to ever see that person
No,
again.
absolutely not.
But the forgiveness is not for them. It is a gift to yourself.
Exactly. Yes,
After I forgave, I wasn't dwelling on, oh, if only they should have done this, I would be better, and
that's
that
it.
victim mentality. And
That's it.
I have time to do things to make me happy, to make life better, to be creative, to write, to do what I want to do. Um, so yeah, I think that forgiveness is such a huge component now. We haven't even got into any of the questions. We're just having such
I
a
know it doesn't matter. It's okay.
so so.
We're going with the
Well,
flow.
here's one. Here's one. How's spirituality? What do you have? Spiritual practices? What do you believe? What do you practice?
Oh boy, I'm a very spiritual person. And what I use when I work with my clients, I'm extremely passionate about science and spirituality, and I think that they're completely interconnected too. Completely interconnected. When someone says, I'm a science person," I'm like, okay, okay. But very often they can explain each other. It's the more you study it, the more you realize how it's like science can explain spirituality, spirituality can explain science. And that's why for me, it's all about depending on who I'm working with. And like one of your question was like, like how do you work with certain clients? Do you bring spirituality or science? I usually I'll get to know the person, who they are, I let them talk, and then I will adapt my vocabulary and my examples to who I'm speaking with, because they might not be ready to hear me talk about consciousness and about the soul and all that. They might not. And then their ego, and I will use my intuition to go, okay, I cannot go there today because their journey, it's not there yet. And that's okay. So, how can I take someone from point A to point Z if I start using examples, terminologies, vocabulary that's at S? I'm losing them. I'm not accompanying them to where they want to go. And it's not where I want to take them, it's where they want to go, where they need to go. So I start where they are, and then we take steps together. We do checkpoints because it's not my journey, it's theirs. For me, that's why I say, like, as a coach, I'm there. My job is just to ask them the right questions because the resources, the answers, it's within them. They have all of the answers, not me. I can ask them certain questions, make them ponder, make them wonder, make them think, talk to their subconscious also, and then they're going to do the work.
That's genius. That's genius. I've designed programs for sober houses I'm living in, and I can design a basic structure of things that people should do that would be good for everyone. But
Mhm.
when it comes to the individuals that live there, it's individual. It's jazz. It's not classical. I have to improvise. So I will intuit. I will listen. I will look at body language. I will look at micro expressions. And I think that's what being an empath is. We had to really learn our environment very closely in most cases because we're very sensitive people for one, and because we have a
Mhm.
lot of dysfunction going on as a survival mechanism and very little agency that we can do something about it as small people.
Yeah.
These are the giants that are feeding us and so on. Oops, what happened here? Oh,
I still see you.
Okay, I got a call coming in. It's coming through my computer too.
Okay.
But, I don't know. How do I get this back to?
I
Oh,
still see you. It's all good.
I don't know how to get it back to large. I'm terrible. You know, the funny thing is I was like a computer expert, while I was addicted to drugs.
Okay.
And I learned all of that in an altered state. I could write code, I could build my own
Really?
websites and so on and so forth. I don't see a maximize on this. I'm trying to click it and oh
It's usually top right. Mine is in French, so
yeah,
I mean, yeah,
I got a little tiny
yeah.
like instant message type screen for you now. Oh boy. This is not good. But Zoom, no. Well, you know
And
what? I'm gonna just go. Let's just continue this way, and I'm hopefully it's doing a whole recording of just the
okay,
Zoom screen, and we'll see about that because that would still work.
perfect.
Oh, I lost my train of
No,
thought.
no, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, I'm someone also that can talk forever and ever. It's something that my listening skills I've worked
It's-
on over the past years because that's what most of my job is actually listening. It really
It
is.
is. It is. 90% of what I do when I counsel people. Oh, I know. You know, it's like jazz. It was like jazz, and I had to intuit and I had to find the person where they were from the perspective that they lived, what they had gone through and stuff, and then individually cater it to them, you know, and I can do that very well because I came from the point of disbelief that prayer, meditation, all this frou-frou was stupid and unscientific and had no
Mhm.
scientific basis. But really, what I had over that period was extreme cognitive dissonance. I was
Mhm.
only looking at the side of science that said everything's purely material, we're here for no reason, and so on and so forth. There was plenty of science that said, hey, well, we don't know who God is or whatnot, but we know what happens to people when they practice these practices. That's empirical. We can tell you
Yes.
if you meditate daily, things will get better. Things will get better. If
Yeah.
you say a prayer, even if you have to consider it a message from your conscious mind to your unconscious, I'm saying a prayer to my higher self
Yes.
to do
Yeah.
this. So whatever you have to use in the beginning, use it.
Yeah.
But just do those things for a period of time long enough, and I'm sure you'll start seeing the synchronicities abound, the right person at the right time in your life, the right
Yeah.
video, the right book comes across your path that you just absolutely love and you needed to read. So, I can come at it from the point of someone who didn't believe. I was agnostic because either faith in a deity or faith in atheism took too much faith. Both of those require
Mhm.
faith.
Mhm.
And I find that Western science specializes and zooms in on everything with a microscope that keeps it very atomistic and far from the wide view. That when
Yes.
a little bit of science will teach you materialism, a lot of science will teach you spirituality, because I can read a book
Yes.
on quantum physics now and go, oh my God, that ties in with this
Exactly.
mystical practice, with this mystical practice. My energy feels lighter when I'm living in love, when I'm living in joy, when I'm living in peace. I feel more expansive than constricted.
Absolutely.
I've seen like some examples between my wife and I. We love each other greatly and we've been together so long that I will read her thoughts. She'll come out with something. I was just, that was in the forefront of my brain. You just picked that up from my energy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that what you do is absolutely genius, because if you, were to try to explain that as a system, it would probably take, a tome, an encyclopedia to look at the nuances that through the intuition, through the energy, through the interaction itself that you will pick up on. And I just ask you, do people just pick up on that anywhere in public? You go to Walmart and somebody just starts unloading on you.
What do I do in that
No,
moment?
do they do that? Do they just, because you're receptive to it? So, you're in a bus stop, and you get the person's life story.
Listen, Paul, it happens all the time. The number of people that just, and they'll always tell me, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I don't know why I'm telling you this. And I know why they're telling me that. And it's because it's all about the energy also, right? They feel like, and my job though, in that moment, I know is I need to have some sort of protective bubble for myself. So then that way I don't drain my energy. That's extremely important. So it's all a question of balance. And it's still something that I'm learning, because I've been in situations where I was constantly listening, helping. And then I would be drained of my energy. Then I'm like, that's not better. That's not good. I need to rebalance myself. And I need to learn to kind of put this protective bubble. And I've done that with, and I mean, I'm not mastering it, but I've done it in a sense that now I can still be present, but not, because that's what happens when you're an empath, right? You can, your energy can be drained by the person sitting in front of you. There's one thing that I want to say, because I don't want to forget about this. You had mentioned a bit earlier before how, you had brought up some ideas working in corporations, and the only thing that they do is for profit. I completely agree with everything that you said. And I know I had a feeling, I know where you were going with that, where your train of thought was going with that. And that could be a completely other conversation that could last a really long time. Being an agent of change, which is what I feel that I am, and maybe you might feel that you are, being an agent of change in this world today is extremely challenging. And the thing is, when you realize that you have the power, where you own that power to heal physically, emotionally, that takes away from large corporations that their main focus is profit, because that means you're dependent on something exterior of you. But at the end of the day, is you do have all the resources inside you. So one of my mission is to empower other people to heal themselves on their own, because they do have the resources. We all do. We just forgot how to use them, or we were never taught how to use them. And another thing I'd like to say, because I see the time, and it's important for me to say, what I believe in is I focus a lot on collective consciousness. Also, we all have our individual conscious, right? And I see the universe as a supercomputer. So I imagine, let's say if I have to use an example, there's this supercomputer, and we have our individual consciousness that's connected to that supercomputer, because we are all connected to each other, to nature, to everything. So sometimes I will be triggered by certain thoughts, certain actions, behaviors from other people. And that will sometimes generate some strong emotions. Like I see, for me, injustice is something that's huge. My values are like freedom is important to me, respect.
Yep.
And sometimes I will be afraid of something, or where our future is going towards, or I'll be angry about something. And then I remember that we're all connected to that supercomputer. So we're all feeding, right? Whether I'm scared of something, someone else is scared about something completely different. I don't understand their fear. They don't understand my fear, because our belief system are completely different. Then I remember I'm plugged into that supercomputer, our collective consciousness. What do I choose to inject into that supercomputer? What data do I choose to inject? And then I remember I want to inject compassion, joy, love. So I make the choice in the moment, in the present moment, as to how I respond to a certain situation, conversation, comment. It all goes back to the law of choice. You always get to choose how you respond and what you inject into the universe's collective consciousness, or AKA supercomputer.
Yeah, I have a similar metaphor. That I am, I'm a drop of water apart from the ocean, but still, a part of the ocean. That the ocean exists and that we are, living in a flesh suit for a period of time, apart from this greater field of love. And I do believe that the field is, does have intelligence though.
Yeah.
Does have intelligence and does have love and does have compassion and so on and so forth. A lot of times when you get into people that are purely on the manifestation track, um, they just want to believe that it's a non-entity that doesn't, care whether they do well or care, and I don't, I think, my feeling is that no, this is something that, has created us like children. And, the best example of what you can get here on Earth of how it loves us would be a loving mother. I
Mhm.
think that would be the best example that you can possibly get when you have a, and we as humans are imperfect. And with the mother, you will get um, the lens of love for the child. And sometimes we call that rose-colored glasses. You're wearing rose-colored glasses, and when a mother will be like, "Of course you can be an astronaut. Of course you could be president
Mhm.
of that." No, no, they're seeing their child's true potential because they're looking at them infinitely, like a god would look at us. And to me, that is an incredibly that's a gift. It's a gift. And that love, in turn, when it's done correctly, lets us, realize our own potentials. Mom says I can do it. I'm going to go with mom's view on that. And through that love that we can, become great. My wife could always see that in me through the years. She could always see something great, and you're going to go places, you're going to do things, and I never saw that within myself. I thought she was delusional. It's good that she thinks I'm great. I need her to take care of me. And I was not good at taking care of myself. And but she saw things that I couldn't, but I can see them today. I can
You
see them
can?
today because I love myself today. And I backed into that love for myself by just imagining that, whatever created us loves me.
Mhm.
Because at best, as a human being, what do I want for my children? I want them to have a good life. I want them to be happy. I want them to have good relationships. I want them to have a good job that they like to go to every day. I
Yeah.
want them to have all the best. And if I can want that, as flawed an individual as I am, and from what I've gone through for my children, then, the idea to me that perfect love wouldn't want that for us, is
Mhm.
just incomprehensible. You know, what would be, I don't think we're going to get to all the questions, so I think we're going to have to do another day of this, Lisa, which, by then I will get my Zoom chops up. But I see pictures on social media brimming with love. Who lights? Who's the one that lights up your face? Who are the people that do that? And your description of your perfect day for Lisa Stott?
You know, when you sent me the questions and you asked me what's the perfect day for Lisa Stott, I actually did some stories on my social media platform based on that question, because I absolutely love that question. And I wanted to share that with you today, that when you asked me that question, I was like, that's an amazing question. What would a perfect day look like for Lisa Stott? So it really made me go inside and ask myself that question. So first, I'll answer the first part of your question, which is who brings that joy? I would say it's my kids. And I know that maybe a lot of people will answer that, but my children, Paul, were the ones who chose me as their mother. And I tell them on a daily basis, thank you for having chosen me as your mother. And both of them are so completely different. And they teach me on a regular basis how to become a better human being. They are my best teachers. So I don't see them as just, kids. I see them as my teachers. And every time they do something or they showcase love towards me in their own way, it brings me to practice gratitude. And practicing gratitude is like a key to happiness, right? So I would say definitely my children. Because I don't know if I didn't have children, Paul, I don't know if I would still be here today. They're the ones who really kept me going and pushing me to grow and be the person and complete my mission. And that's why I know that they saved me. They literally saved me. And what would a perfect day look like for Lisa Stott? I would say waking up, doing meditation or yoga in the sunshine. I love the sun, just the best source of energy. So I would say spending time in the sun, either meditating or doing yoga. Then probably doing some physical activity like playing soccer with my kids. I love playing soccer. I played for a really long time. And I would say ending it by eating good food, drinking amazing red wine. I mean, I am Italian, so I just love me some good red wine. And to top it off, cherry on a Sunday, is to dance for hours until my feet hurt. That's how I would just love to dance, and just brings me so much joy. And having fun and joy is so important to me, because it brings about laughter, and laughter is good for the soul. So that's simple, but I'm just smiling thinking about that perfect day.
It's funny. None of that perfect day was tied to how much money. Yeah, maybe the bottle of wine, maybe the bottle of wine. But none of that was, the vast majority of that day had nothing to do with finances and so forth. And I'm finding that as I have new guests on the show and people that have healed themselves, because I don't think you can bring it if you don't have it. It's just like people say, bring it. Well, you can't bring it if you don't have it. So you
Yeah.
have to have that healing component to bring it. And in mainstream psychiatry and psychology, well, it's kind of like if I were to get a book on kung fu, and I had to study kung fu very hard reading the book, but I don't do any kicks. I don't do any movements. I do no katas. I do no forms. I do no practice. I just read about Kung Fu. And then I go out and I'm going to tell people all about Kung Fu. That to me is the majority of mainstream psychology now. Is, well, I've read about CBT. I've read about, NLP. I've read about, shadow work. I've read about these, but they haven't tried any of it, and they haven't healed. So it's unhealed people trying to teach unhealed people how to be healed, which is blind leading the blind. So,
Absolutely.
I find that, you know, that for the most part is what our universities are producing, because it's like, well, hey, you are learning all this stuff, but who do I want to see do kung fu? The guy who has read a zillion books on kung fu, or Bruce Lee, who gets out
That's
there
it.
and kicks ass every day? I want to see
That's
Bruce Lee, you know, I
that's
want
it.
to see him play ping pong with nunchucks, you know, I mean,
Mhm.
that's pretty cool. So
That's it.
I believe that, and I think we definitely need to do another show, if you'll indulge me for another show where I know how to use my equipment better and so on. But this has been enlightening. This has been beautiful. What can we expect next from you? Are you writing more?
Well, listen, I'm actually going to face my own fears. And I am going to bring all of my services, everything that I do, back to the corporate world because it's lacking soul and it's lacking emotional intelligence. And for years, I did not want to go back there because I was completely turned off by it. But there's been so many, I connect myself with my spiritual guides on a regular basis. And the answers that I've been getting are to go and bring emotional intelligence within the corporate world because I've known it, I know it, and it's much needed. And I know that I can make a difference there because at the end of the day, I'm reaching out to human beings. So that's what I'm doing. And that's my own fear because I have to go back there, a place where I did not want to have to go back because it was so far from who I really was. But then I realized I'm like, I left because it lacked emotional intelligence, compassion, and empathy. And now that I am learning to master it and I can teach it, I need to go back there and offer them my services through conferences, workshops, full day trainings, and so on. And at the same time, I'm actually proud of that because I'm going to be working on getting through that fear of getting back there. So yeah, so really using my vulnerability to face my fear.
Well, I don't envy your goal. You know, my plan, my future plan, 5, 10 years, is to open my own therapeutic community that is modeled after a little bit after 40 years of Zen, to heal people where they come to detox from their electronics, learn meditation, do some spiritual rituals, some plant medicine, and so on and so
Mhm.
forth, and some pinpoint psychology modalities that will give them direction to work on. And so I don't envy you going, but I do think it needs it, and I think if anyone can do it, I think it's you. You know,
I think so
I am
too.
feeling that I'm feeling confident that you can handle the task that you set before yourself. And thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Namaste. I got
Namaste.
much love for what you're doing and for you as a person. You know, so thank you so much for being here, and let's do this again soon. I want to hear your stories of how you bring this love to a corporation, and hopefully soften it and make it a little bit more you know,
Human.
more human. Exactly. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Lisa.
Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I'm going to end the recording.